from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, the very first thing I have to say is I got a card from Robert Killian addressed to the fairest lady in the land. Thank you very much, Robert Killian. And we had the most amazing, absolutely incredible delivery from Mr. Killian of 4 phantasmagoric arrangements of flowers. This is one, and there are 3 others that are identical in white, and I've taken a photograph of one, and I am going to post them because they just magnificent arrangements, just so wonderful. And I gather from the florist, who is Jessica Leela. She is actually Jessica Leela Dixon, and I think I'm going to photograph her card. And so if anybody wishes to patronize her, because she and her husband brought around the 4 arrangements. This is so heavy, they had to lift it up and bring it up here for me. And I can only say thank you so much, Robert Killian. I'm so touched. He said very nice things about me. And I was just absolutely touched beyond compare. Now, I think I should, at this point, ask Sean to post the photograph. Now, before we plunge in with today's content, I have to tell you, the other evening I went to the launch of the Heartland Institute, which is a think tank. It's, I think, regarded as a right-wing libertarian think tank that focuses, I think, primarily on the economy and the science, or the over interpretation of science with regard to climate change. The president of the Heartland Institute, James Taylor, came over from America. It's an American think tank. And the Institute's UK Europe director, Lois Perry, were the hosts. Sorry. It was held at Brooks's, which is one of the main clubs in London. It's on St. James's. And it was absolutely such fun, I cannot tell you, with so many interesting people. Nigel Farage gave a speech, but I'm not going to go into any great detail because I know that they are going to be launching officially their everything next week. So I'm not going to step on their toes, but they have very kindly given me a little bit of Nigel Farage's speech and 1 or 2 photographs with Lois. Also, Daniel Hodson, who is one of the arch Brexiteers in this country, and he was the head of the Mercers as well. He's an extremely eminent figure in the city, And he actually is a friend of mine for nearly 50 years. We met in June 1975, and we are still friends. And he introduced them all because he's something of an expert on the subject. Nigel Farage was there, and Widdicombe was there, Liz Truss was there, and Lois Perry was, before she got pneumonia, so she was only for a month, the president of UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party. Then she had to resign. And she rather naughtily in her speech alluded to the fact that she was one of the few women who has headed up a political party, but her, shall we say, duration was not the shortest in history. I looked at Liz Truss's face when she said that. Liz Truss, I don't think, was very pleased. But anyway, we're going to post some photographs, a few photographs to give you a taste of. It really was very nice. The champagne flowed, but they said it was English champagne as opposed to French. So it's really technically sparkling white wine. But I don't know if you know it. It's not the French who discovered champagne. It's the English. So I leave you with that thought, and I'm going to ask Sean to post the pictures. Then we plunge in with the nitty-gritty. Okay? So, Comar says, Lady C, did you know that Page 6 released their most hated celebrities of 2024? Sorry. And Meghan was number 1. Number 2 was Diddy. And number 3 was Harry. Comar, I didn't know. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. I researched it, and maybe my investigative skills are not what they ought to be, but I think you might be confusing rancor with Page 6, because I saw no evidence of Page 6 having done any such thing. When I read this, I thought, my goodness, if Page 6 is doing this, we may as well bury Meghan, because poor darling, she really has croaked. But it is rancor. And I'll read out the top 10 because most of them are very entertaining. Number 1 is Meghan. Number 2 is Harry, not number 3. Harry's number 2. Sean Combs, who is Diddy, is number 3. Oprah Winfrey is number 4. Ellen DeGeneres is number 5. Jada Pinkett Smith is number 6. Bill Cosby is number 7. Kim Kardashian is number 8. James Corden is number 9. And Amber Heard heard is number 10. Well, I have no doubt that when Meghan heard of this, she was as disdainful as she always is, because she understands that she is one of the most beloved people on earth, and anybody who doesn't acknowledge it isn't worth her attention. However, she'd much rather have their negative attention than no attention at all. I have to tell you, if she doesn't pull rabbits out of that hat, a Royal Oak or American Riviera Orchard or whatever you want to call it, if she doesn't make a howling success of that, and I don't see how she can, because she's so unlikable, and she's so affected and pretentious, and she's so full of the stuff that requires 16 lavatories in one house, that I don't think she has a chance. Poor Megsie baby. One tear left eye. Anna Moore says, Lady C, what do you make of Prince Harry browbeating the NYPD over the imagined car chase in New York? Well, yes, it's actually disgraceful conduct. It shows that Harry is as big a bully as Meghan, and that he has no compunction about threatening and harassing people to get what he wants, and that he will be extraordinarily persistent until he does. The fabricated car chase, or imagined car chase, whichever word you want to use, where, remember, for 2 hours going 80 miles an hour, and the mayor himself said that there was nothing untoward, and the police chief initially said there was nothing untoward, and Harry threatened him repeatedly to such an extent that, and doubtless got somebody to speak to him. I'm sure it was done through their political connections, that, Prince Harry really needs you to make an arrest. And Harry was demanding that they make arrests. Otherwise, he was threatening to complain and to effectively haul them over the coals. Because what Harry really needed, above all else, was to get the letter that the police chief then wrote, because the police chief at first said no arrests made, nobody needed to be arrested. Then conveniently wrote a letter which was supposed to sway the British court, and this was just before the Ravek hearing towards the end of the year, when Harry insisted that they arrest people. He's telling the police, who've already said that nobody needed to be arrested, nothing had happened worthy of being arrested. And he kept on and on and on and on at it, threatening, writing letters, insisting that they arrest people. And then he got the letter that he wanted for his lawyer to submit to Ravek, in the hope that Ravek and the court would then decide to restore his security. Well, the judge didn't bite. The judge refused, even though in the second letter, which contradicted the first letter, because the first letter said no arrests needed to be made. The second said they had identified 2 people who could be arrested, and still nobody has been arrested. So that tells me, I don't know what it tells you, but I know it tells me that Harry was exerting unrelenting and unacceptable pressure upon official authorities in the United States to influence a British court so that he could get back his IPP status and wouldn't have to pay for his security. I think the whole thing is an absolute disgrace, and it shows just how nasty Harry really is, and how extraordinarily persistent he is, and how entitled he is, and how once he gets the bit between his teeth, he's not letting go either. So it's not only Meghan, it's him. They are very well matched. My great friend Mary Michelle Rutherford, who is an astrologer, and she doesn't tell fortunes, but she does it off the ancient science of astrology, with the books and the this and the that, and very academic. When she was staying here for my 70th birthday party, she did readings on various people. She did one on my son Dima, which was spot on. She did one on a girl that he was consorting with at the time, which was spot on. And somebody asked her to do Meghan and Harry's chart. And of course, because she knows their time of birth, etc., she did, and she referred and read it out. And she said that according to the charts that she uses, Harry and Meghan are perfectly suited for each other. That they are effectively 2 peas of 1 pod. And this shows it. When I say this, his nobbling of the chief of police of New York shows to what extent he also is not prepared to take no for an answer, and he's going to continue and continue and continue and wear people down, which is what he did with the police. However, the NYPD in New York. However, it didn't behoove him, because to this day, no arrests have been made. New York has CCTV footage everywhere. There were photographers. They were complaining about photographers. They had the photographic records, the proof that that Harry and Meghan were exaggerating had actually taken place. And of course, he lost the case. Really. How do you cope with people like that? I feel so sorry for his father and his brother and the sister he never had, whom he loved according to him and who loved him. Of course, it's amazing how bonds can be broken when untoward behavior enters the scene. Let's leave it at that. Sue Anderson says, "Dear Lady C, I am a 72-year-old Australian. I have realized after listening to you and reading your book, Daughter of Narcissus, sorry, that my mother was a narcissist. I still, at this age, find it difficult to forgive her for what she did to our whole family, who have and continued to suffer the consequences of her condition. Were you able to forgive your mother, and if so, how? I would like to find peace. Did I ever forgive my mother? That's a very good question. Sometimes I'd say yes. Often I'd say yes. But when she died, I realized she'd been dead to me for 33 years, even though I didn't realize it. And I was in the habit of treating her the way I treated other people, giving them a chance, blah, 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 blah. I certainly accept her and accepted her for what she was. And that's why I stopped speaking to her. I have to say, when she died, I realized something I'd never realized while she was alive, that for much of my life, I was aware of, without actually being conscious of it, that this woman had a knife pressed very firmly into my back and at times would prod it and poke it. And it's only when she died, and I thought, I felt such relief. I thought, finally, I'm rid of the enemy lurking in the background. But I accept her for what she was. I accepted her even then for what she was. There were times when I absolutely loathed her with a passion. Then I think one goes through phases, and I don't think one absolutely necessarily all the time has forgiven someone who's injured one greatly. But I think as long as one, by and large, has come to terms with what they are, and you don't try to change, it's perfectly natural. It's actually desirable, I'd have said, to have human reactions. That includes being angry. But if you can, I think you should just accept the fact that this is what she was. And maybe if it makes it easier for you, you can realize that just as how her colour eyes were her colour eyes, her narcissism was a part of her. And I don't think I get too bogged down in, well, let me rephrase that. Let me put it this way. I think in life, God created everything. And everything happens. If God created everything, ultimately, we are all God's creatures. And that doesn't mean that God or we should like everything untoward that we do. But ultimately, none of us is perfect, so one may as well just accept the fact that people are imperfect and not be bitter. I think you can be angry without being bitter. And I think you can accept someone, and that's a form of forgiveness. But people often think that forgiveness means, oh, well, it was awful, I've forgiven them, so now I'm going to erase it and like the person again. No, if they're unlikable, they're unlikable. That doesn't mean you don't have at some time didn't love them. And that part of the emotion remains, but other things supersede it. I think acceptance is a very important thing in life. Accepting the rough with the smooth, the good with the bad. And I think you can forgive someone. I suppose I don't even think I've gone beyond forgiving my mother. I accept her for what she was. And, it's beyond forgiveness. But that doesn't mean that you have to have liked what she did. So, and but may I point out, if you have only recently realized the enormity of what your mother was, it's going to take time for you to process it. And I don't think there are that many shortcuts in life while you're processing something important. I think you have to go through the various steps to come to genuine acceptance, which is, I suppose, people would call forgiveness. So you can call it is a form of forgiveness. But I just don't think that people actually understand that forgiveness doesn't mean liking the person. So I don't want to belabor the point beyond this because it's so complicated and I don't want to lose the nuances and the mixed bag that all of this is, because it's accepting the reality of the mixed bag that frees you. So let's put it that way. Evelyn Gould says, it's not a Christmas card, no mention of Christmas on it. Now everyone stopped talking about polo, mission accomplished. Well spotted. Or it might be Evelyn Gould. Evelyn is the boy's name. Evelyn is the girl's. I'm not, and they spelled the same, so I don't know which it is. And Audrey Darby says, or it may be if you're American, it's pronounced Derby. They did the messy card so everyone talks about it. Stop talking about the polo flop. It worked. Everyone is talking about the photo. Isn't it wonderful how we are now all so wise to the tricks of the trade of those tricksters? That card was, and it's actually not even a proper Christmas card. It's season's greetings, holidays, happy holidays. I mean, so crass. The son of the Supreme Governor of the Church of England and his wife can't even say Merry Christmas. I mean, how tacky is that? But yes, they got the attention away from the big flop that the polo is. But don't for a second believe that they were not always going to come out with season's greetings, because they were. Rose Gregory says, Lady C, why do you think they even put out a Christmas card at all? Talk about full of their own self-importance. They are ridiculous. To my knowledge, neither the Princess Anne nor the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh do so. What on earth do you think they are doing? The part where she was mimicking Diana with an open-armed greeting made her look pathetic. Well, I thought she didn't only look pathetic, I thought she looked amusing. 3 legs and 1 arm. I tell you, some accomplishment. Mm. Well, why do I think they put out the card at all? To ratify their importance. They have set themselves up as an alternative royal court. They do not understand that royal courts are connected to states and your status within that state. Hence, the monarch and the heir will produce Christmas cards that are publicized, while the rest of the royals simply send out their Christmas cards without self-importantly pronouncing that they have done so by advertising it in the media. Isn't it interesting that Harry and Meghan, who insist on drawing a line and having no one invade their privacy and no one invade their space, go to such lengths to actually invade their own space, because it's totally inappropriate for a second son to do what Harry and Meghan are doing. Prince Andrew never did it, and Prince Andrew was a second son. Princess Anne never did it, and she was a second child. Tacky, tacky, tacky. However, how else are they going to be able to perpetuate the pose and the posturing as this self-important royal couple that they want to deceive the world into thinking they are more important than they are, unless they self-importantly behave in ways that actually give the game away. The whole thing is bizarre, but they are bizarre. If they had been going to America, according to them, to seek financial independence and create a new way of serving the institution, they would never be making any of these announcements. These announcements are made purely to ratify their importance and keep themselves relevant as if they are senior royals, and not only senior royals, but heirs in immediate line to the throne, which they are not. Of course, the Prince of Wales has to do it, and of course, the King has to do it, but no one else should do it. Shaw Roberts says, ubiquitous Mark Dolan has parted company with GB News and can now devote his time to further supporting Harry and Meghan's calls for the UK taxpayer-funded security. Good riddance to this fickle, manipulative reporter. His was to deliver the news headlines, not to manipulate and rewrite them. Shaw Roberts, I actually have a lot of sympathy for Mark Dolan, who he's interviewed me repeatedly. I think the way GB News has gone about shedding him and one or two others has been disappointing, let's put it that way, because he actually had gone on his Christmas break when he was given the axe. And he's not the only one who's been given the axe. As somebody who appeared twice a week for many weeks on GB News, and who was a great supporter of the channel from the very outset, I was one of the very first people to appear on GB News at the very beginning, when it started in shambolic fashion, which, I mean, teething pains. So I'm not knocking that. And I went into the studio with Mickey. Mickey sat in my lap. And I appeared on one of Dan Wootton's first shows. But GB News it's a disappointment to me. Let me put it that way. It's a disappointment because it's not, but I understand why it's done some of the things it's done. Paul Marshall, who's the primary owner of GB News, has spent an awful lot of money. You could actually say the rationale was that they would be protecting freedom of speech, was possibly just a fig leaf for him to buy a place at the top table. Well, he's bought The Spectator, which is, I think, the oldest magazine in this country. It's a right-wing magazine. And he wanted to buy the Telegraph and has not been able to buy the Telegraph. But he spent an awful lot of money on GB News, and my interpretation of what happened was that his ambition to buy the Telegraph meant that he had to suck up to Ofcom, because if he didn't suck up to Ofcom, he wouldn't have been allowed to buy the Telegraph, because whoever's buying a major newspaper company in this country has to be tipped off by the authorities. And if Ofcom had too many complaints about GB News, and of course a lot of the left wing were busy complaining to silence GB News, but also he would not have then been allowed to buy the Telegraph. So the whole thing has been always more layered than it appeared to be. And they got rid of Dan Wootton in a way that I found quite distasteful. They took advantage of Lawrence Fox's misguided comment, placed out of context, with Eva Santini Evans. She was always talking about that she wouldn't bomb this, she wouldn't bomb that, she wouldn't bomb this, she wouldn't bomb that one. And so he actually used her expression against her without placing it in context. And so that was to get rid of him. They got rid of Calvin Robinson, and most importantly, they got rid of Dan Wootton. So and when they got rid of Dan Wootton, I think Mark Dolan was rather hoping that he would replace Dan Wootton. And he didn't, of course. Dan has turned out to have been irreplaceable. But now they've got rid of Mark Dolan. And I'm not actually in favour of axing somebody just before Christmas, and especially after they have been led to believe that they were going to be returning in January. But he's not the only one who's been axed. But I suspect a lot of it is also financial. Now, if they axed their very best, who was Dan Wootton, of course, axing Mark Dolan is more understandable. Let's put it that way. And he's going to be replaced by Ben Leo, who's actually very good. I know Ben, and I like Ben, and Ben is really capable. Ben is the one who was caught up in that train fandango with P. Dina after she was on her way into London having stayed with me, and they were both on the train together. And he's bright, Ben Leo. He's very bright and he's capable. And who knows, he might actually be better than Mark Dolan. But it's sort of sad when a station that says that it's a champion of free speech not only bends a knee to the very authority that is determined to ruin free speech, but then goes further and doesn't reward loyalty in the way one would hope they would reward loyalty. So I have nothing against Mark Dolan, but they've cut down. Well, let's leave it at that. They've halved Jacob Rees-Mogg's time on the air. And I mean, to an extent, there needs to be recalibration, and you don't want things to be stale, but there seems to have been an awful lot of throwing out the baby with the bath water. Of course, the biggest baby of all to have been thrown out was Dan Wootton. He was responsible more than anyone else for GB News' success. But he now has a new avenue and a new platform, and good luck to him. So I hope that answers the question. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Okay? Thank you so much. Take good care and Godspeed. Bye-bye. And if you have truly enjoyed this, could I prevail upon you to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and a bientôt. Bye-bye.